Hi, and welcome into this Telstra virtual event. I'm Justin Cleveland, and today we're talking about the NBN and how to get your business connected now that you're in a ready-for-service area. There are a lot of benefits to having the NBN installed and a lot of benefits to doing it early that you might not otherwise think. We'll get some details on that and also some tips and tricks to get your business ready to go, all coming up in just a moment. I'll introduce our speakers also in just a moment, but first I want to tell you what you can do with the Telstra Virtual Events platform. Feel free to move around the boxes on your screen. Make these slides as big as possible because there's going to be a lot of information coming to you. Also, if you have questions, in fact, a lot of this presentation is going to be driven by your questions, so feel free to submit those now. We'll be taking them throughout the course of the presentation, and we hope to get through everything in about 30 minutes. And if we have a lot of questions, we'll spend a lot more time delving into those as well. So you'll see a Q&A box on your screen. Feel free to submit those questions early and often. So let's go around the room now and introduce our speakers. First of all, Rob Hacker, the Executive General Manager of Sales from NBN, is sitting here in Sydney with me. Welcome in, Rob.
Thanks, Justin.
Also joining us from Melbourne is a Senior Product Specialist for NBN, Paul Shepard from Telstra. Welcome in, Paul.
Thank you all.
And I'm Justin Cleveland, your host for today's event. Before we get into the details and the nitty-gritty of NBN, I want to ask you the question, which is, when do you plan to migrate to NBN? As soon as possible, eventually, not a priority, only when you have to, you're forced to, never, you're switching to mobile or some other alternative, or you are unsure. While we let those populate, Rob, you've been talking to a lot of people about NBN. How are things coming along with the rollout?
Yeah, things are really proceeding at a pace, and that pace is increasing every month and every year. So just in the financial year past, we've completed around 1.2 million homes and businesses serviceable, and roughly about 50% of those are now actually connected to the NBN. In the year ahead, that's going to more than double. And then in the year beyond that, it's going to double again. So you can see we're really shifting gears as every year goes past. And very positively, I think the uptake is really proceeding at a pace when we release a new geography.
Excellent. So let's look at the responses here. And as soon as possible, 41.7% of you want to do it, but eventually it's not a priority coming in at second. Only when you have to or forced to. I think we're going to give you some reasons to go ahead and make that switch right away later in the talk today. But I want to hand it off to you now, Robin. Tell me a little bit about the NBN, a little bit about what we can do to get connected and what we have to do to get our businesses ready.
Yeah. So thanks for that. And really the opportunities within the NBN really do extend and probably provide new opportunities for businesses in Australia. We see, looking across every business, there's a possibility to make your business more efficient, whether it's in your voice services or whether it's in your internet services. And then within particular vertical industries as well. So there might be specific applications where greater bandwidth, greater reliability might give you access to your customers in a better way, be able to utilise the technology so that you save costs from travel or some other issue that you have where getting access to a customer or providing them the best service might be a difficulty today. So some of those verticals in, whether it be in health or education, community, retail, you can see lots of possibilities, and I think it's a question of thinking about your business. How could you get closer to your customers? What are the possibilities for expanding that?
Yeah, actually, Brian's got a question that sort of bounces off of that. He says he was told the NBN was a content service and aimed more at home users, which obviously, as a home user, I'm excited for it,
yeah.
For movies, streaming, games, whatever. But maybe it's not a great idea for a business. Differentiate for me the home experience versus the business experience and why it's a good thing for a business as well.
Yeah. So there's a number of different services that we provide over an NBN connection. And really that's a discussion that you'd probably have with your Telstra account representative as to which ones suit better. The standard home services are a contented service, but nonetheless they're running blistering speeds and people are using them for a lot of the new services like video streaming and so forth. But also for business, we have committed information rate services for use with voice and also for broadband. So this is where there's a symmetrical service of the same speed up and down and a committed information rate with dedicated parameters. And we're seeing that those would be much more usable and definitely something that businesses would be looking to implement.
Excellent. So let's jump into, some of the industry benefits.
Yes, and if I can just go across into that. So just from the health education community and overall business and entertainment, so there's just a few examples that we've got there. Health as an example, telemedicine. And really, I think, if you just put your imagination to any part of your business, you can imagine how can you improve that experience or get closer to your customers. Telemedicine meaning, can I actually send information on an X-ray or a medical test across to an expert somewhere else in Australia or somewhere else in the world? And it's something that they could then view live and have the patient and the expert actually having a conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing. Because I just had to scan X-rays on my neck, and I had to get a CD, and I took that CD then to someone else. Had I lost that CD, which I have a propensity for doing, there's little things that can make a big difference in somebody's life.
Yeah, that's right. And then in general business as well, cloud services where you might have bought a software package concerned about the upgrade. Is there a capital cost of doing that? Whereas if you had access to a cloud service, changing office would be easy. Having a different sort of cost model in terms of how you buy those services from the different software vendors would be possible. So you might be able to change your whole business around and make it more cost efficient.
Yeah.
Now, just a little bit of the roadmap of where we're at, and this kind of comes back to the question about the contented services. When we launched, the initial services and the initial footprint was largely about getting homes on the network. And so the initial services were residential grade broadband and telephony. And we should emphasise it's the telephony part as well. Some people were confused as to, is it just the internet or is it voice as well? And yes, it is definitely the voice as well. And then since then in 2012, we did bring in what we call traffic class 1, which is one of these committed information rate services where you have the same speed up and down and characteristics so that you can carry high quality voice on the network. And since then we've been bringing in other committed information rate services such as the traffic class 2, which is a service which a business would probably want to use for broadband applications, video conferencing and the like, and then also any other high-speed internet type transactions that they have within their business. Then we're continuing to develop those. So we've got a 40 megabits per second symmetrical service that's in market at the moment, and then there's a 100 megabits per second symmetrical service that's in development that will be coming out fairly shortly as well.
Yeah. I'll take that. Go ahead and sign me up right now.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So it really just gives you the impression that we started with residential. We've been building business over the last couple of years. They're there to be used right here, right now, and they'll continue to be developed. If we look across the different technologies, and this is maybe a bit of a recap for most of you, but also maybe some news where you had some questions. We do have a number of different technologies that we're using to supply the NBN into your home and premise, and it's based upon the current government's multi-technology mix to make sure that we roll out as fast as we can and as cost effectively as we can using assets that are currently in place, but making sure that we've got consistent performance of our product right across all of these technologies. So currently we have fibre to the premise that's underway. We also have fibre to the building, which uses fibre into the building and then copper technology from the building up to the various premises, whether they be homes or businesses. Fibre to the node is about to be launched in the market over the next couple of months, and that's the same technology as fibre to the building, but just on a mass scale. We also have hybrid fibre coax, which is the existing networks from Telstra and Optus that we will basically supercharge and reuse, and that will be launched next year. We do have the fixed wireless in market at the moment, which is for more fringe areas outside of metros and in smaller towns. And then satellite, we're currently operating an interim satellite service, and we do have 2 satellites that are due to be launched over the next 6 to 12 months, and that final satellite service to then come into operation. So we'll be using whichever technology is the quickest and most cost effective, providing a very similar service across each of them. And if we look at the speed tiers on the next slide, I'm not going to go into all of this, but it's just to show that we're trying to make the look and feel of each of the technologies pretty much the same right across. And FTTP is fibre to the premise, FTTB/N is fibre to the basement or the node, HFC hybrid fibre coax. So you can see that we're keeping the same sort of constructs all the way through. And you can also see on the bottom of the slide the business data where we've got 40 megabits per second symmetrical bandwidth with the committed characteristics in there already in market. When we do launch the FTTN and then also the HFC product, sometimes there's a bit of a transition period where we start with the lower speed versions of those and then we build them up a little bit, but they'll certainly be available within a short period after launch. And you can see on Business Voice, you can basically have a multi-line voice situation into your business with up to 50 voice lines, and you basically buy a service with the appropriate amount of bandwidth for that. So continuing on, and just to explain a little bit about the way that the NBN rollout works, we do have a 3-year plan. In fact, we've got a plan for the rollout for the whole country, which is then crystallised per geography in the 3 years ahead. And then as we get close to start work in each geography, we basically do a preparation piece, and then we start a design of that particular technology, which takes up to 12 months. And during that time, we provide information to that community that, okay, we've started work in your area, we're going to be coming up to releasing service over the next short period. And then when we're ready for service, that means that all of the premises, meaning the homes and the businesses in that area, can then place an order to actually start their NBN service being connected into their home or their business. And then from that point, there's an 18-month clock that is ticking. And at the end of that 18-month clock, the copper services will be disconnected. So that's the time that everybody should make sure that they're on board. They contact the service provider that they want to provide the services. In this case, it's Telstra, and make sure that they've got all the preparations and they start that work early. So really, the key message from this is that 12 months before ready for service, we're doing all the work to get it ready. And you should be also doing work to sort of assess your situation and how fast you want to get onto the NBN. And then there's an 18-month window to actually make sure you migrate everything across. And then in terms of migrating to the NBN network, a few points here. So it does enable, the reasons why you would, is it does enable many, many services, either improved on what you've got or potentially new that you're not able to use today, and provides a similarity of services in different locations as well. We believe that it can unlock cost savings and make your business more efficient just by combining services or making the most of the technology. And it can also improve the service to your customers and also the experience of your employees. So it can be more productive day by day and can actually create a better mood, if you like, or morale within the office just because things are working a bit faster. Things to consider are that it does, the disconnection at the end of the 18 months does include all voice services and all internet services. So you should consider things where you might have a security service running over a voice line today into your office, or if you've got FPOS or ATM machines, anything else that's using a voice line today, you need to have a plan as to how to migrate that during that time, because that copper service will be disconnected at the 18.
And you're talking any sort of fax line that would use...
All of that sort of stuff, Justin. Okay. And then on the next slide, just a little bit of a checklist. And I would even suggest, when you start to hear that the NBN's coming to your area, start your work early, just to get a feel, do the inventory of what you have in your business, make sure you know all of the services that you have operating. Do you have FPOS, ATMs, fax? Do you have any monitored medical alarms or other devices that are running? Make sure that you do contact whoever your suppliers are for any of those services. So that could be your banks if there's an FPOS machine in there. Ask them about what their migration plans are. And then also make sure you contact your Telstra representative just to say, I want to plan for this, want to make sure that I've got everything covered, and then you set out a timeline, work out what NBN services you might need, and then get it underway well in time.
Excellent. Brad has the question, and this jumps back just a little bit, which is for premises that have FTTB, fiber to the building delivery, are the services options, does anything change from fiber to the premise or fiber to the node? Yeah,
so fiber to the building is where fiber comes into the building, but the the run from the equipment in the basement into your business is the copper that already exists in that building. The trials that we've run and also the live experience since we launched in March is that we're getting 100 megabits per second in exactly the same way as we're getting with fibre to the premise. So the simple answer to the question is yes, it will be the same experience. And the physics of the whole thing is that if you have a very long run of copper, then a fibre to the building type approach, the speed can go down as you get further away from the node. But if it's sitting there right in the building, we're finding that the speeds are identical.
Yeah, it's negligible no matter how long the run.
Yep.
And Ali points out also something to think about as a fire line for your own.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things you may not consider that are on a voice line that actually are. Even if you have a third-party ATM in your building.
Exactly, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rob, and we're going to have a lot more questions for you as well. But I do want to pose a question to you in the audience, which is, what are your key drivers for moving to the NBN? And you can select all that are applicable here because you have to, which is a reason. Extra bandwidth for cloud applications, to increase your addressable market, maybe grow revenue streams because NBN is cheaper for your business, consolidate voice, video, and data to simplify your business, or another reason. And while those consolidate, I'm going to turn things over to you, Paul Shepard. Go ahead and take us through some of the offerings from Telstra and some of the things that we need to know in order to get connected.
Thanks, Justin, and thanks, Rob. I'm going to actually reinforce a lot of what Rob was actually talking about. So what I want to cover today is really transition. It's all about transitioning to a brilliant connected future. So over to the next slide, please. So what this is all about is that Rob talked about a faster deployment of the NBN that's going out there. And that does mean that you're going to get the ability to transition, but also it means that you can then unlock a lot of those faster speeds, which then unlock a lot of solutions for you and a lot of benefits for you. So the transition to the NBN offers a huge opportunity for most businesses. To really look at that, look at what they're doing and look at transforming their business. However, there is the catch that if you don't transition your services, and that's your copper-based broadband and telephony services, within that 18-month clock that Rob was talking about, you will be those services will be disconnected. So that's the big question we get all the time. Disconnected ? Does it really happen? And the rules are hard and fast. Any ADSL cable, standard voice services on the PSTN network, and that does not cover our ISDN voice services, need to be migrated to the NBN, or they will be disconnected in that 18-month at the end of that 18-month window. And yes, we have started enforcing disconnections. We are informed what services to disconnect, and we do start disconnecting them. And actually, any other service provider in the same place in the industry is also doing exactly the same thing. And that has been occurring for most of this year now, and the pain that it has caused for quite a lot of customers has been quite significant. And that's across, doesn't matter if you're a very small residential customer or the biggest company in Australia, the same rules apply. So, but it's not all bad news. That's just that's one side of it. The most important is there's a lot of positives in this move across. But there's really three things you need to do to get there. First one, Rob covered as well, which is really you've got to understand and plan. The most important thing is understand what is at your premise, at each individual premise, in the way of telecommunication services. So that can be the services, the equipment, and the solutions you have. So, we talked about fax, we talked about FPOS, basic telephony, alarm lines, fire panels, any other equipment monitors that may be working there, anything that's going over the copper network at this stage, and then what solutions are sitting behind there. So that solution might be a simple FPOS or fax solution, or it might be a much more complex solution you've got working over a broadband connection. So you've got to understand all of those. And then plan how they're going to be impacted by the actual transition. And there's things like what IP addresses are you using, for example, in a broadband setup? And of course, the transition across, you'd like to move your IP address across. So understanding what you'd like to do is really important. And you can even start planning well before the NBN is available. You notice that the rollout is increasing, so really most services will be impacted and most sites will be impacted over the next few years. So it's well worth planning all your sites now. And it's an opportunity not just to transition what you have, but to look at transforming what you have. It may be a good time to look at upgrading equipment, services, and other things you have at the site that you were planning to do anyway, but this is a great opportunity because the bandwidth you're going to get gives you an opportunity to do that. And a great example of that is a major retailer who's looking, as the NBN go through, upgrading from an ADSL connection to the NBN, but then upgrading their internal point-of-sale display systems so they can live stream their own ads, their own material, in effect their own TV into each site that will be displayed on large screen TV. So that's a great opportunity they've got, something they could never do on ADSL. And so what we also talked about is that the NBN is being rolled out area by area. Right? This means all businesses and all businesses and households in a particular area are on the same clock, as it were, their same ticking clock of 18 months, which means those who leave it late will all need to be serviced in the last few months. And because it's area by area, of course, there's limited resources. There's only so many NBN technicians and Telstra technicians to get through the work. So a rush has occurred in those last few months. And so
actually, Paul, that brings up a question that I have. When we were in the old ADSL and ADSL 2+ system, we had the limited nodes, limited connections. Is there a risk that if we don't sign up early that we won't be able to connect?
Well, not because of capacity of the NBN, but because of just the time of getting the orders through, making sure the orders are all submitted and through and into the system so NBN knows about them so they can connect you before the disconnection date, as it were.
Right.
The risk is that you have a gap between when your services are disconnected and when your NBN services come live. That's the big risk, that you will be without service for an amount of time. And that's what we need to avoid.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
So it's really about getting those office technologies through, and the key, getting to work out to beat the rush, so you can get your orders in early and consider the transition you want to do and the transformation you want to do, making sure you can line up things like your other suppliers, like your PAVX supplier, your office equipment, your IT people to also work with this, so they have enough time to get their equipment ready as well. And it's about avoiding that last flood of orders and the last panic, really. The positive of all of that is if you plan early and work through it early, you can get the most out of the NBN and you can get to enjoy those benefits a lot earlier. So you can benefit from the speed and the new solutions you get in. And that could be, as we discussed, things like video conferencing, IPTV in each of your branches to push all messages through. And acting sooner gives you that ability. And in summary, where a service provider like Telstra can help out is that we have an account team that can work with you in that planning stage, that understanding and planning stage, really look at your business continuity and make sure that we've set it up really well where you're not going to hit that downtime, and in fact you're going to get really leverage from the benefits, and then help you make sure you get the orders in right, beat the rush, and enjoy the benefits earlier. So now over to a bit more of the interactive part, which is really question and answers from everybody in the audience. So if you have any questions, please type them into the questions box on your screen. And Justin, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we do. In fact, one from Anita says they've had 5 different NBN services connected, and each of the experiences has been different. Part of that you can attribute to the technology mix, Part of that you can attribute to, just timing. Sometimes there's a crush of people, so the timelines may be slightly different. But what can we expect in terms of a timeline and procedure about an NBN connection?
Yeah, look, I think I can characterise it as, in this initial stages of the NBN, the experience has been variable and has not been exactly what I think everybody has hoped for. It's been below our expectations and customer expectations in some areas. Now, both NBN Co and Telstra are working to improve that. Honestly, at the moment, many orders are taking in between 60 days to 120 days. That average is falling greatly. But when there's complex sites, complex equipment involved, it can be a reasonably long process. So when you look at that sort of timeline compared to 18 months, and I've been talking 2 to 4 months, there's a big risk to business continuity if you leave your orders to that last moment, because you order only a month out from disconnection and it takes 2 or 3 months to get your services on. You've got a 1 to 2 month gap in connectivity, or i.e. you're off the air for a month, which could significantly impact your operations.
Yeah, that's just on its face crushing to any business. Even retail businesses with an FPOS now, you need some sort of connection. So what about technologies? You mentioned sort of the ancillary technologies, the things that we could upgrade, the things that we could get set up. What about the base technologies? What sort of an investment are we as a business looking at making just in the things that we need to connect, modems and things?
Oh, look, at the let's call it the mass market products of broadband, the NBN does their installation and provides the service, as it were, to your premise, provides a connection. On top of that, Telstra just provides a standard broadband connection, for example. The router we provide is a standard, router that it's obviously an upgraded router for the NBN, but in effect, as far as the customer is concerned, it's a 4-port router with Wi-Fi that does all of those type of functions. The connection we provide is over the Telstra Internet Direct network, so it is like a broadband connection. The way I put it is, it's exactly the same as a current broadband connection, but it's on steroids. So standard computers will interface with that in the normal way. You don't need to upgrade your computers. On the telephony side, what we're really providing is a standard telephony or a PSTN equivalent service. And so standard PSTN handsets, for example, can be plugged straight into the equipment we provide and will interface straight into the Telstra telephony network as normal, i.e. you pick up the handset, you get dial tone, it rings as normal. We also offer IP handsets, which give a better quality calling solution, better quality features, but you don't have to update to them. There may, and other systems such as PABXs and other equipment, as we're not getting rid of ISDN at this stage, you won't have to upgrade, anything that uses the ISDN network. It's really just the PSTN side of things. And it's a good opportunity to even look at if you've got an older PABX, maybe it's time to look at upgrading it to an IP solution. This might be a good time to start making those decisions. Yes.
Yeah. So Chris has got the question, is fibre to the node using the existing copper infrastructure, or are new pairs delivered for the NBN?
Yes, I'll take that one. So the idea with FTTN is that we get the fibre very close to the premises. So running down the street, there'll be a new node that's put into the street that basically converts the fibre into and then accesses the copper technology that currently runs into the premise. So a lot of the copper has been replaced by the run of the fibre to that node, but then from the node into the business premise or the home, the idea is that we would reuse the copper technology there to be able to do that short run of a couple of 100 metres at a maximum. Mm-hmm. And if there is damage to that copper, then it would be replaced, but the idea is that as much as possible it would be reused. One thing just to check on the way through your upgrade is making sure that the wiring within your premise is up to scratch. So if there are any breaks or anything like that in any of the in-building wiring, then that could degrade the performance. The NBN service will basically run to the first point inside the building. And
it's the same problem you would experience, I think, regardless of the connection.
Yeah, that's right. But as you go up in speeds, you might actually see potentially some more issues to deal with at that time. But to answer the question, basically, is that as much as possible, we will reuse that copper that comes just from outside the street into your premise.
Excellent. Brad has a question on business continuity, and I think Paul will pose this to you. They have a simple site that is a battery backup option for the voice service. For their fibre to the building, they are unsure if there's a battery backup. Do you know if fibre to the building will survive a power outage?
That's actually a very good question. I think that is still the final construct that the NBN will be doing of is the node and the equipment in the building always backed up is still in decision with NBN Co. Unless, Rob, you've got an update to that.
Yeah, so we do have battery power in the nodes. I can't quite, just off the top of my head, what the length of time is for the battery run on those nodes. But it's certainly something, if the power is out in the building, you should look at, what are the mechanisms that you should use to keep your equipment running inside the building. But there is battery backup in the fibre to the basement and fibre to the node devices themselves. Yeah.
Good. Have a question from Christopher. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, sorry. And just covering off a couple of things. What NBN and Telstra recommend as well is because in your premise you'll be using a router now, and all your telephony, most telephony will be going into the router as well as broadband. We do have the specs that if you want a continuous service, you'd need to put a UPS or a battery behind the router as well. And there are specs available of the minimum specs you'd need to do that as well.
Yeah, and they're not an expensive solution. You can find a wide variety of them, so that's a good idea. Now, Christopher's got a question on...
Just one other thing I just wanted to cover off as well. Rob was just talking about as well in-home wiring. One of the advantages when you're planning early with your account manager and also with the Telstra setup is when we do go in, we look at your wiring and how we connect in the fibre to the node, fibre to the building scenario, how we connect the router and equipment in. Our technicians are finding through simple changes to your wiring, they can get significant in-premise improvements in performance by basically taking out a lot of the resistance, the joins and connections in your wiring and giving the NBN, in effect, a straight pass straight into the router has a huge improvement. So obviously that's part of the planning process, to act early, to get that done so you get the ultimate out of it and don't rely on your old wiring. Anyway, back to you.
So actually there was a question that has come up earlier that I think is worth posing again, which is about the placement of the box and the actual installation itself. Say, for example, you're not happy with the proposed site. Is there anything that can be done to move the location of any sort of NBN equipment?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. So generally the way that we approach that is that the NBN equipment should be located as close to the existing entry point into the home or premise as possible. There should be a discussion between the technician and the premise owner at that point as to what the options are and where it's best placed. If there is a concern that it has really been placed in the wrong place, then you can contact either through Telstra or through to the NBN to say you're concerned about this, you believe that it should be relocated. And if in fact it has been placed in the wrong place, then we'll go through and redirect that.
Good. Paul, I think this one's one for you. Christopher's got a question, which is they bring their own device. Each site has a specific configuration that is loaded onto the router. They receive the NBN IP details prior to the cutover. However, they don't receive the details of the NBN gateway IP. Can this be made available before the cutover, as it needs to be hard-coded into the router?
Well, we do provide IP addresses and port addresses before the NBN is installed and where it goes in. and it is just straight IP traffic, so I'm a bit confused. I'm looking to a technical expert next to me who, no, I'm not too sure how to answer that one. We might document that and get back to you.
Sounds good. I have another question, which is kind of dealing with the battery backups, which is, can you advise what is acceptable for use for essential services in the event of emergency? So what would you recommend? Like, the power goes out, you still need the emergency line from a lift because nobody wants to be stuck in the lift for a couple of days or a couple of minutes, frankly. Security alarm panels, home age emergency equipment, everything that requires a PSTN analog phone line.
Yeah, so with all of these, you've got to consider the network as well as the device. So if you've got a power outage in the premises, then is the device powered itself? If it's running off mains power and there's a power outage, then that particular device, a medical alarm or other security alarm, will also be subject to that power outage. Power won't be carried across the NBN like you have today in the telephone line.
Right.
So there will be some battery backup for the service continuing, but you also need to make sure that your particular device has access to power as well. And we really recommend that you contact the supplier of that particular service, whether it be medical or security, and say what your needs are, how many hours of continuity you might need, and talk to them about what, maybe there's a dual path solution, maybe it includes the use of mobile to make sure that you've got some alternatives there. And that basically your business requirement is maintained.
Yeah, I think that's something that we have to come to grips with, that it is going to be very different than the old phone line, which you could, at any point, power or no, just plug in a phone to the jack in the wall and it would work. That is going to be very different. That's good to know. So we have just a couple of questions left in here. Anita has the question, do you need a telephone line to be connected?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what that means. So you can get an NBN service whether you have a telephone line connected or not. If there is no copper line into that premise today, then if it's in an FTTN area, then we will provide that copper line. If it's in an FTTP area, then we provide the fibre line into that premise. So you don't need to have a telephone line today to get the NBN.
That's what I think the question is, so that's good. So any sort of new construction...
There might be another type of question in there. I think that could be half of it, and the other half might be, with Telstra at a site, do you need to have a voice service to get a broadband service over the NBN? No. You could, in effect, have standalone broadband if that's what you really want at a site. There is no rule. So it might be one or two of those answers.
Excellent. Chris has the question, if a company has a dedicated IP range and this will be split across the existing PSTN and ADSL network and NBN during the transition period?
Paul's probably the best to answer that.
Yeah. If you've got an IP range with Telstra on, for example, Telstra Business Broadband, we, as of the end of the month, will be able to migrate that existing range. So, for example, if at that site you've got an IP address or range, you can keep that at that site, and we transition your services from ADSL to NBN, we transition your IP address. If that's what you want, we can do that. If you want new IP addresses as well, we can give you new IP addresses. So whichever way you want to go, either migrate or keep. If it's a IP address that we haven't provided you and it's on another network, obviously we can't migrate that.
Okay, that's good to know. So that if you are switching service, there may be some complications or some things that you have to deal with. Good. So those are the questions that we have sorted out. We have just a couple of minutes here. I want to go around the room and essentially ask what should be your key takeaways and what should you know if we take nothing else away today about NBN and the transition. Rob, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, so I think the keys are that we are rapidly accelerating our rollout. There's over 1 million premises today. There'll be well over 2 and closer to 3 million at the end of this financial year, and then maybe almost double that the year beyond. So it will be coming across your business over the next 24 months somewhere in Australia. So the key there is, I think, now's the time really to think about transition, to look at what the services that you have in your particular business, and then to be ready when RFS, ready for service, comes around, to actually start that conversation with your Telstra rep and make sure that you get in the migration plan early. There are services that are there in the market to basically solve your communications needs. So all of the prep work has been done. Just make sure that you get yourselves ready and try and get on the bandwagon early when it comes to ready for service in your area.
And Paul, what about you? What should be our takeaway today?
Well, pretty much Rob said it. It's about engaging early with your Telstra team so we can help you with that planning and understanding what you've got and planning your transition or your transformation to the NBN. And as part of that, we'll help you get those orders in early so you, in effect, beat the rush. And that's about giving you business continuity and making sure you haven't got downtime, really, and that your services seamlessly go across.
So we had a lot of questions in here today, and I thank you for those. Some of them were very technical in nature, and if we didn't answer them fully, we'll be handing them off to some technical specialists as well and getting back to you with more detailed answers. And if you do have any questions at any point, please contact your Telstra rep. That is going to do it for this Telstra virtual event. We'll put a few minutes back into your calendar. Thank you for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, there is a link in the resources tab on your screen. You can find out more about the NBN, but again, the best thing to do is just pick up the phone and call your Telstra rep. That is going to do it for us here today. I'm Justin Cleveland for Rob Hacker from NBN and Paul Shepard from Telstra. This has been a Telstra virtual event.